Peace, love, and light, you guys. How's everybody doing? Let me get my lighting together. There we go. It's your girl, Morgan Renee Myers, tuning in with you all for another reading of No Disrespect. Okay. No Disrespect by Sister Soldier. I don't know what's up with my lighting today. Can y'all see me good? Hold on. Get my life together. I thought I could see myself fine before I hopped on here. Looking kind of shadowy. Maybe because I'm used to this being back here. Like that. Does that help any? There we go. Is that a little better? Lord, I'm going to have to redo this whole video over because I'm sitting here playing with lighting. Can y'all see me? Because I can't see me. It's fine. Okay. It's going to have to be because, honey. Anywho, okay, I feel like you can see me better back here. Alright, well, it's your girl, Morgan Renee Myers, tuning in with you all. So, I am going to be reading this last chapter of No Disrespect. I had, there go the lighting. I had stopped in chapter 7, which is entitled, hold on. Catch myself up, Derek. And this is the one where she was actually open to the idea of polygamy with him. She had just been out of a relationship for like over a year, and like it seems like every dude she come in contact with in this book she had some type of issue with. They turned out to be on the down low. They just turned out wasn't who they said they wasn't a truthful, honest person. So I had stopped at the end of chapter 7, and chapter 7 is the last chapter in this book, but then she has like a little exit chapter explaining her thoughts, kind of like she did with the intro, which I appreciated, like her note to her readers for the end of the book. So I appreciate that. But before I get into that, let me show y'all something that I've been working on. So I've been crocheting my butt off. It's spring. I've been doing a lot of halter tops and shorts and mesh wraps and things of that nature. So I tried to make a romper, right? Now, I don't really like it because I'm shaped funny. And my boob's about to fall out. And I got to tighten the back up a little bit because I ain't do it right. But just showing you guys what I'm working on to have in store for you all. So once I learn how to perfect this, then, you know, I get somebody measurements. I could do whatever for them. So that's what I'm working on this week. More of my crochet creations. I'm about to rebrand, and it's just going to be more of my creations because I'm going to be sewing and doing a lot of other stuff. And I know I feel like I'll be saying it every year, but I'm really about to. So let me get into this last chapter of the book. There we go, lighting. Come back, baby. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to read the last line of where I finished off. So he smiled and said that if Trina and I had met somewhere else without the situation having ever occurred, we would probably have liked each other a lot. It was issues of the heart. He said it was issues of the heart, he said, that kept sisters at each other's throats. I sat quiet for a moment. Derek was a real gem, I thought. Then he said he wanted to tell Trina that he and I were going to live together. Perhaps that would force her cooperation. 2 nights later, Derek phoned. He had talked with Trina. She wasn't pleased. He said, she wants to meet you. She figures if we all see each other face to face, I'll be able to choose which one of you I really want. Will you be able to choose? I asked. I won't choose. I want you both, and I'm optimistic. Can we come by your place tonight? I agreed, but after hanging up the phone, shockwaves shot through my body. What had I done? Was this girl really coming to my apartment? I had yelled at her on the phone, but I never actually expected to see her face. Was she crazy? Was I? Would she bring a gun, a knife? Was she big or small? Could she fight? Why should we meet at my apartment? Why not someplace more neutral? What did she really want anyway? I began to panic. Should I fix my hair? Would she try to outdress me? What would Derek do? Would he hug her? Would he kiss me when I opened the door? Where would we sit? Oh no. When I opened the door to my apartment, I saw Derek standing there humbly, wearing dress slacks and a nice shirt and shoes. He looked me squarely in my eye, unafraid and serious. I turned my neck a quarter of an inch, and I saw a woman I knew must be Trina. She didn't look anything like I had pictured. She was beautiful. I had always assumed that I was prettier than her. I was wrong. She was very dark-skinned with lovely jet black hair. She said she had it nicely combed into a French roll with curls on the side. She had on a light fall, long black cashmere coat. Her nails were perfectly done in a French manicure. Around her neck dangled a gold chain with a crucifix on it. She had a fine leather black Coach pocketbook. I cleared my throat and invited her and Derek into my living room. I sat on a chair. Derek sat on the couch. Trina said, "No thanks, I'll stand up." "So," I said with confidence, "where do we start?" Derek began by saying, "I'll start. This is a situation that is very painful to me, but I've handled it the best way I know how. That's honestly. But it seems when a man takes a strong and honest stand, there's always opposition, which has led many men to take the easy way out and lie. Now, Trina, I love you." My heart fluttered. I was uncomfortable, but I sat like a proud and impassive hostess. I wondered what Trina thought of me. Now that we were inside and her fine coat was open, I could see that she was thin and somewhat flat-chested. I found myself thinking that while her face was pretty, I had the voluptuous body of a woman. Still, she was very feminine in her bearing, the way she stood, the way she held her hands. I had always wanted to appear feminine. Unfortunately, I found that being aggressive, planning rallies, and building schools had left me a little less ladylike than I desired to be. Our hair was the same length. Hers was better groomed. I calmed my fears down by telling myself, of course she looked better. She had plenty of time to work on her appearance because she had no brain. Meanwhile, Derek was saying, "Trina, you have always been there for me. You're the house that always welcomes me. You know that, and I have told her that too." Trina stood proudly, holding onto her pocketbook, and Derek showered her with compliments. Then Derek changed the topic. He was staring at me. "But I also love her. She is everything that I've ever wanted in a woman. She's intelligent, political, and as you can see, Trina, she's also beautiful like you. What I want to know is if we can work this out. You are two people who I love at war with one another. You are two people who I love at war with one another. It does not make me happy. For some men, this will be a hell of an ego trip. I don't think they realize how difficult this is when the issue is love and real concern, but I'm prepared to handle this." Silence fell on the room. I looked at Trina. Her face was frozen. I imagined that it took all her strength to hold it like that. She refused to speak. This book cover coming off, so I'm going to take it off. So I said, "You don't know me, Trina, and I don't blame you for being upset. Believe me, if I thought there was some better way for us as African women in this country to get by and get along, I'd tell you. But this is the ugly predicament we find ourselves in. As a sister, I love you even though the only thing we have ever done is fight. Now, I care for Derek, and so do you. I believe we can share 50-50. I'm willing to work it out. I'm willing to get to know you if you're willing to get to know me." Trina was clenching her teeth. She put her thin hand on her hip and said, "Get up, Derek. Let's go. Get me out of here." Derek stood up and said, "Trina, we're not finished talking." Trina walked up to Derek, slowly swaying her little behind with her long, pretty finger pointing at him. "Derek, you listen to me. I love you. This bitch is crazy. What does she mean she cares for you? I love you. You are coming home with me. You two ask me what I want, what I expect. I want 100%, 100%. You know why, Derek? Because that's what I gave to you. Do you love me, Derek?" "I already told you that." "Well, then put on your coat. We're leaving here. We're going home and we'll pretend this whole thing never happened. That we never laid eyes on this African bitch." "Trina, I can't allow you to disrespect her like that. She's a beautiful woman, a real leader. Everyone in our community respects her and you should too." Trina twisted her lips and said, "Derek, this is the last time I'm going to say it. Let's go home right now." I got up from the couch. I was burning up inside, but I had a weird kind of respect for Trina's persistence. But I didn't like her calling me a bitch. There was no need for me to fight her physically. We were both too old for that. Besides, I figured I had the advantage anyway. After all, this was her man. He was in love with me. He was standing inside my apartment telling her that he loved me. I had never seen the inside of her apartment. So I said, "Look, Trina, I can see that you're hurting. I don't want to hurt nobody. You and Derek can go. Be happy together. I just want one thing. I'd like to talk to Derek alone before the two of you leave here, just for 5 minutes, and you all won't be seeing me anymore." I really didn't know why I was making this request. I suppose it was because as I watched Derek go about each phase of our relationship being honest, putting himself on the line, and looking out for my feelings and interests, I had come to have a deep respect for him. I wanted to say goodbye. I could see that juggling 2 women was too much of a strain, but Trina did not care about my problems. She said in a voice that sounded more like a mother than a girlfriend, "Derek, come now." He said, "Here, take the keys and get in the car. I'll be out in 5 minutes." She stormed out the living room and down the corridor. I gave Derek a hug and said, "We tried. It's not going to work. It will be easier for me to get over this than her, so I'll bow out now. Leave it alone." He looked at me as though the whole thing was tearing him apart. He gave me a kiss. Just as he got the words goodbye out of his mouth, we heard a loud crash. We went to the window. Trina was in Derek's car trying to drive away, but his car was a stick shift which she couldn't operate, so she had crashed into a street sign. We ran down the stairs and out the door. There was glass all over the front steps. Apparently she had broken the glass to the outside door of my building. She had the car moving again. It was jerking wildly as she attempted to use the clutch. Within seconds, it just shut off. She jumped out the car and started honking the horn like a mad woman. People from the block came to their windows. Some people came outside. When she saw the audience, she started screaming, "She doesn't love you. What did you do to him to turn him against me? You must have sucked his dick. That's right, everybody, she sucked my man's dick. She sucked my man's dick." By now, I was ready to fight. She ran up to the steps where we were standing, surrounded by the glass, looking stupefied. She tried to swing her pocketbook at me while she cursed me out loudly. Derek jumped in front of me and grabbed her. He held her, then picked her up. He carried her to the car. She fought him. He had to struggle with her to get her in the seat. Once he got her in, he ran to the driver's side in an attempt to drive away. She jumped out and started charging toward me. Finally, after nearly half an hour of the 2 of them wrestling, I watched as they drove their dented car down the street and around the corner. A couple of days later, Derek called to tell me he had spoken with his father and told him the entire story. His father had said that Trina was a spoiled, selfish, middle-class manipulator. He had always felt that way about her. Trina was empty-headed and reminded him of his ex-wife. He told Derek he thought that it was great that he had discovered a woman like me, that we had a lot more in common and an opportunity to challenge each other to grow. He advised Derek to leave Trina and her silly games. If Trina wanted him, Derek's father had added, then she would straighten out her attitude and cooperate. Derek soon showed up at my place with his belongings. We sat down and talked. He wanted us to live together, but he made it clear that he didn't consider himself to be leaving Trina. He was just waiting for her to settle into the arrangement. Living together was fun. It was like being back in college. Derek was my roommate. We went everywhere together. He was fascinated with my meetings, lectures, rallies. We even attended one of the entertainment parties that I usually like to avoid. Trina continued to harass us. She called my apartment so much that I had to keep the phone off the hook most of the time. This was bad for my business and annoying to boot. The more I ignored her, however, the more determined she became. She started calling prominent black leaders in our community, telling them how I, as a young leader, was misusing my leadership powers and destroying love relationships. She asked them to call me and discipline me for stealing her man of 9 years. Eventually, I received a call from a world-renowned elder historian. He told me he had received a call from Trina. He asked me what was going on. I explained the entire situation to him. He asked, well, what kind of young man would date a woman for 9 years without marrying her? I responded, a dysfunctional one, but that's all the younger generation of women has to choose from. He explained that polygamy was a complicated system. He said that it was only utilized by the African elite out of greed. The preferred African practice was one man, one woman. I told him I also favored one man, one woman, but it just hadn't happened that way for me or any of my girlfriends. He told me that he didn't want to get in my business, but that I should be careful because Trina seemed distraught yet determined. It could become dangerous. In fact, Trina seemed increasingly out of control. She would call my apartment until she finally reached Derek and say she had a flat tire and was stranded. Could Derek come and fix it? She would call and say she had a bad case of the flu and couldn't get to the pharmacy. Could Derek bring her some medicine? She would say that she lost the key to her apartment and was locked out. Could Derek come with the emergency key she gave him? Derek would simply remind me that I had promised that he and Trina could maintain relations. Then he would kiss me and go. Finally, I made a decision. I was going to tell Derek that he couldn't see Trina anymore. I would explain that if we were in an honest, open relationship, there would be no resistance. It would be fine where there would be no resistance, it would be fine to see Trina, because then we could agree on a structure, a system, a schedule. But since Trina refused to admit she was sharing, she caused disruptions and chaos in our household, creating crisis after crisis. This meant that there was always stress. I was a nervous wreck. I wasn't happy. Derek said he had never agreed nor intended to leave Trina. He said he would have yet another talk with her. Needless to say, I didn't like his response, so I plotted. The next day when he got home from work, I was nowhere to be found. I had taken off to my friend, the entertainer's house. I had deliberately locked Derek out of our apartment. He didn't have his own key because usually we were together. I knew Derek was jealous of the entertainer. After all, he was a hip-hop star. I stayed at his place until midnight. When I got home, Derek was sitting on the front step. We had our first serious argument. He didn't want me to go over to the entertainers or any other man's house. He wanted me for himself. I told him that's exactly how I felt, so we should have a one-on-one relationship. No Trina, no entertainers, just the two of us. He didn't want to, but he gave in against the threat of me seeing other men. For the next month, Derek and I held each other hostage to our new agreement. He didn't trust me, I didn't trust him. Because he and Trina were so close, I knew he'd probably try to sneak and see her. He knew if he messed up, I would run right down the block to the entertainer's house. Derek soon became depressed. He seemed out of focus and disinterested in our relationship. Excuse me. He stopped tongue kissing me. You know this is getting real when he stopped tongue kissing you, honey. It's like a little tongue. Then, the sex became less and less frequent. When I asked him what was wrong, he would answer nothing. I started to feel he was just going through the motions. This was no good for me because one of the things that had attracted me to him in the first place was that he was totally fascinated with me. Now that I seemingly had got what I wanted, I was still unhappy. I called one of my girlfriends to discuss the problem. I felt a little guilty because I had not let her in on what was going on, but Sherry was cool. She was the only one of my girlfriends I would ask because she was the most mature and the least likely to kiss my ass. I needed a reality check. Sherry was politically minded, a graduate from Howard University, and a big women's rights type of female. So I took the day off. Sherry and I met at a quiet little Thai restaurant where we could have the privacy we needed to hear ourselves think at the same time. I took a deep breath and told her the whole story, every detail. When I finished, I took a sip from my water glass to beat back the dry mouth. I looked up and waited for her to say something. It was slow coming. She held up her right hand and spread her fingers wide apart. She knitted her eyebrows together and peered at me, while the flame from the little candle on the table danced on her face. Finally, she said, I thought you told me you were over him. Over who? I asked, confused by her response. Chance, she said so sternly. What does Chance have to do with that? I asked. Chance broke your heart. Now the rest of the entire world has to suffer, huh? You're losing it, girl. I've always respected you, but I can see that you're losing it. How could you be so cold-hearted to that poor girl, Trina? Poor girl, I raised my voice. Her man came to me. I didn't come to him. I was just trying to be honest. The sharing thing was a political decision on my part because of the genocide, the man shortage problem. Bullshit, Sherry said. The sharing thing doesn't make any sense. It's not even logical. It's unlike you to be illogical. You're saying that you know these men out here are dysfunctional? Yes, I said with certainty. So you're asking a dysfunctional man who cannot properly manage and conduct one successful relationship with one woman to conduct two relationships with two women? It's impossible. If you can't handle and love and support one, how can you handle and love and support two? I sucked my teeth for her. I wanted an honest opinion, but now I wanted to take my story back and make her disappear. But it was impossible to shut her up. I should have known. She continued, You're just on some kind of power trip. No, I'm not that kind of person. You know that. Then why do you emphasize I didn't come to him? He came to me. I'll tell you why. Because you're used to being in control. Chance not only broke your heart, he destroyed your ego. So you go find what seems to be a nice brother who you can lead around by the nose, and you can make puppets out of him and his girlfriend. It's cruel. You don't even love him. How do you know? I asked. Because no sister in love is going to sit down and discuss sharing the love of her life. That's why Trina can't do it. You can do it because it's just some kind of game to you. I don't know. You make this Trina girl sound like some kind of angel. If you knew her, maybe you wouldn't be sticking up for her. Oh, no, I don't think she's an angel. She doesn't have to be. She sounds to me like a regular sister, the kind you and I want to educate and empower. You act like just because she doesn't know as much as you, she doesn't deserve to have her man to herself. For 9 years, she was with him. Come on, that's her man, no matter how appealing you may be to him. I started to feel ashamed of myself, but I just couldn't give in, so I searched my mind for good points. If it wasn't me, Sherry, it would have been another woman. Even he admits that. Yeah, well, he needs to resolve some issues himself. He's either got to find an effective way of sharing information with and educating her, or he's got to leave her and find another woman. What he can't do is show up on your doorstep with all his problems and his little broken down relationship that he carries around with him like a security blanket. Even if he is a nice person, it's just not fair. Sherry, what about me? What do I get? What do I end up with besides back-to-back lonely nights? Girl, you and I will find strong men, but it will take time. They're scarce. But in the meantime, girl, you can't get desperate. Desperate women settle for anything. They lower their standards and all the dogs come wandering in. That night when Derek came home from work, his eyes were sad and distant. I didn't know where to start, but I felt, but I felt we needed to talk. Before I could even begin, he said he needed to drive his grandmother to his aunt's house. Was that simply a lame excuse to go see Trina? He said it wasn't. I asked him again. He denied it, but I felt in my bones. I asked him if I could come with him. He reminded me that his grandmother didn't care for me, but I remembered that he had once told me that she and Trina were always tight. Derek, the man who tried to have an honest relationship, lied to me that night. Derek, the man who could never leave a woman, left me and all his belongings that night and returned to Trina. It was for the best. Alright, so that's the end of chapter 7. I was going to read her little end note to readers, but I'm going to save that for another video. Like I did the note to my readers. That I did that by itself too. So appreciate y'all for tuning in. This book was juicy. This is good. Leave your comments and your thoughts on polygamy and sharing a man with another woman. Peace, love, and light.